And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Todd Herzen has the day off. I'm Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by our friends.
You're Steve Deace.
Or you're Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Thank you. See, the balance is already thrown off here. We are brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. They got a flavor for every freedom-loving American. They are your Christian-owned patriot coffee company that stands for the same core values of faith, family, and freedom that you do. But don't buy it because of the values. Buy it because it's a good value in that it's a good cup of coffee. You can try it today or try it again with a discount by using my last name, Deace, as your promo code. When you go to firstcup.com, use the promo code Deace at firstcup.com. Shipped to you within days of being roasted. Freshness is one of their hallmarks there. They put the roast on date right there on every single bag you get. Firstcup.com, use the promo code Deace. Of course, it is a Wednesday, so you know what that means. We will be joined later today by the prophet of woe and lamentation himself. Daniel Horowitz will be here. We will play some buy, sell, or hold later today as well. But let's begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by a mixed bag in the Badger State. A much ballyhooed state Supreme Court race went down last night in the Badger State between Trump-endorsed Brad Schimmel and lefty Susan Crawford. Crawford won rather easily, 55 to 45%, even though Schimmel, the Trump-endorsed candidate, received more votes than any left-wing candidate had received in the history of a Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Interestingly, though, Wisconsin voters passed a ballot question by an even larger margin, which requires photo ID to vote. That measure passed 63 to 37. So a mixed bag in Wisconsin as Republican candidates continue to struggle when Donald Trump's name isn't on the ballot, unless you're in Florida, where two Republicans won their congressional special elections last night in Florida's 1st and 6th congressional districts, though with underwhelming margins. Moving on, a Biden-appointed federal judge in California has attempted to block the Trump administration's termination of taxpayer-funded legal counsel for illegal aliens. Lefties and the mainstream media, sorry for the redundancy, were all up in arms this week over a quote-unquote Maryland father who was, they say, wrongly deported to an El Salvador prison. Stephen Miller, your thoughts?
Let's just go over the facts here. He is an illegal alien. Fact one, what do you do with illegal aliens? You deport them. Fact two, he's an MS-13. What do you do with illegal aliens who are also in a transnational terrorist organization? You deport them more quickly. Oh, and on top of that, he's implicated in human trafficking. Deport, deport, deport. This is who they're going to bat for. What are we supposed to do? Buy the guy a house, get him some free health care,
yeah.
Maybe let him run for Congress?
Yeah, you're supposed to do all of those things.
This is who this is the Democrat Party. This is who they stand for.
Checking in on MSNBC.
Just to slightly push back on Mark, even if you tell me and you prove that they're gang members, I'm not so sure that I'm okay with them being sent off to be tortured in a foreign country, but I'll leave that aside.
Today is what the Trump administration is billing as Liberation Day as reciprocal tariffs go into effect on oodles of countries.
I think the tariffs are going to be the greatest thing we've ever done as a country. It's going to make our country rich again. We have many companies, as you know, auto companies are opening up plants now. We've had 4 or 5 announced already, but many more are coming.
The administration says they've already secured $5 trillion of investment into the United States. One country who seems to want to play ball with Trump's trade policies is Israel, who for some reason had enacted tariffs on imports from the United States. They now say they are getting rid of those tariffs. Mass layoffs began this week at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration, the first steps in a plan to cut 10,000 jobs at the Department of Health and Human Services. And finally, legendary actor Val Kilmer has passed away from pneumonia at the age of 65. Kilmer was known for his role as Iceman in Top Gun, Batman in Batman Forever, and Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Kilmer suffered from complications after a battle with throat cancer, which also affected his career in acting. He did make a comeback in 2022's Top Gun sequel, Top Gun Maverick. Val Kilmer, legendary actor, dead at the age of 65. And that's what happened while we were away.
Hey, quick question. Aaron, can you help me with this? Because, I mean, I'm a Zionist. I'm a staunch supporter of Israel, as people know. Can you help me to understand, though, however, a country whose actual existence is entirely at the security and bequest of the United States ever was putting tariffs on U.S. products? Can you?
You're talking about the United Kingdom, right?
No, Israel.
Oh, you're talking about all of Europe, right?
Well, the difference is
you're talking about most of this hemisphere.
The difference is those were countries before the United States. Israel was not. I mean, Israel's this iteration of Israel's existence is uniquely tethered to the United States.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's no other nation on earth that can currently say its origin is found in the United States of America other than Israel. And I know some of you are feverishly typing your notes right now. Actually, it's God's chosen country, and God made... Dude, okay. If you believe that, fine, but let's just not acknowledge Mother's Day, Father's Day, because God is the ultimate source of life, Aaron, correct?
Yes.
Correct? So we should not honor the vessels and vehicles by which he brought life to you? We should not do that then?
Apparently not.
I think that's like actual commandment, is it not?
Yes.
I believe honoring your father and mother is a commandment. So I understand the spiritual implications here. This is the Biblical Worldview show. But regardless if you believe the prophetic significance of this iteration of Israel or not, we are the vehicle vessel by which this came into existence. There had not been a country called Israel for over 1,800 years. Until May 15, 1948. We made that happen, singularly. And so why in the world? And it should not have taken, oh, well, there's a trade war. It should not have taken that. I mean, it should have just been an automatic. I mean, you go back to your mom calls you and says, hey, when you come by, I don't want to run to the store. I'm cooking dinner. Can you bring me a cup of butter or sugar, from home? Do you slap a tariff on it? No, because it's your mom and you wouldn't be alive if it weren't for her. It makes absolutely zero sense, which then ties into the other nations you just talked about, whose current existence...
Because isn't this... I mean, can I interject here?
Sure.
I understand we don't exist in a vacuum, and reality is muddy, and it's difficult, it's messy. But doing your best just to analyze this, I'm fully aware of all of the arguments against tariffs, most of them short-term, some of them long-term arguments. But just in a vacuum, remove the labels, remove the name Donald Trump, remove Israel and what you think or don't think about its prophetic importance. In a vacuum, isn't a story like that just exhibit A for Donald Trump's trade policies?
I would agree with that, yes. Or at least, at the very least, giving it a shot.
That's what I'm asking.
Let's at least see what happens.
Because all that I've heard against his stated trade policy, is basically some version of a regurgitation of the last 40 years of trade policy. I don't know if it's going to work, but I do know that the arguments against his trade policy are basically we're going to end up in the same spot we were already headed to versus the old trade policy.
Right. I mean, ultimately...
So let's just give it a shot.
Theoretically, am I a free trader? Yeah, because I believe in markets. But if one side is applying a tax and the other side is not, is that a market?
No. This myth of free enterprise has been neither free nor enterprise for about 40 years.
Correct. And so, I mean, why in the world Israel ever thought, as your hand is out, begging for weapons, constant defense, assistance. But hey, let's go ahead and slap a tariff on U.S. imports. Get the you-know-what out of here with that. Heck no. And it makes you think, if a country that beholden to the United States, their day-to-day existence requires our presence and approval. And so if a country like that thought that it was totally fine for them to slap tariffs on our products, imagine how the rest of the world then thinks. The next tier, the nations you talked about, who would all be speaking German or Japanese right now if it weren't for us, right? Okay. And then the entirety of the rest of the world. So, while it violates my understanding of the laws of economics, what Trump wants to do, we are not abiding by the laws of economics right now. And so therefore, since we're already clearly not, if even a nation that literally cannot take its next breath in the next 10 minutes without the United States defending it, thought that they could go ahead and do this to us economically, I can't even imagine what the rest of the world thinks. I'm willing to, break a few eggs to make an omelet here, Aaron, and then let's at least see what happens.
I just want to see. That's all I'm asking for.
Maybe it has to be this one-sided. I can't even envision a reason why that would be the case, but maybe it does. Let's find out, because the previous deal wasn't working out very well. All right, let's get to Wisconsin and what happened there. And you guys may have noticed we've talked very little about it on the show. I have not brought it up until this morning. I had not commented on it at all on any social media. Not because I'm like the left who suddenly forgot what a country called Sweden was in March of 2020 after pimping it for decades. No, it's not because I just suddenly forgot there was a state called Wisconsin. I wanted to see something. In fact, I didn't even mention this to Todd and Aaron, but I made the personal decision. I'm just going to sit back and I want to watch something. Because we saw in the 2022 midterms, and then for the next 2 years of off-year special elections, we got our rear ends kicked all over the country. And we were talking about this a lot in real time while this was happening the last 2 years. And then the 2024 election happened, broke that trend. It almost never happens that you lose the lead-up elections and then turn around and win the main event. That almost never happens, but it did in this last election. So thank God for that, literally. So I wanted to see, because we just did a show, Aaron, yesterday about the cultural shift when Jason Statham's, populist, retribution porn that's rated R and earns that R rating, believe me, when it beats Snow White, one of the OG pop culture properties in American history that is only in its second week at the box office and rated for all audiences, that signifies a cultural shift, right?
Should, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm watching Theo Von do a better job advocating for making porn illegal than most of our churches do. Okay, we're undergoing a bit of a cultural shift. So I wanted to see if some of the systemic problems that we have had on the right. Remember, book sales were down. Remember, Carrie Lake put out a book. If you're on social media, Carrie Lake is still omnipresent, right? Put out a book. She was unable to. It sold about 500 more copies, Aaron, than your book did. How many books have you written? Zero. In other words, our ability to one-to-one translate engagement online into real-world, on-the-ground action the last couple of years, whether it's called votes or commerce, has not worked out. With a couple of exceptions, which I'll get to here in a minute. Something is still systemically wrong on our side. But I wanted to see, given the amount of energy Elon Musk going there to campaign, the amount of energy, the amount of money the left always outspends us. They did here too. So the amount of energy and resources dumped into this race, I just wanted to see what happened. And let's let things play out, not be in a hurry to be wrong. And then we'll have an analysis after the fact. Well, now we have one. I think there are 3 things about what happened last night that we need to learn. Number 1. You have this and the underwhelming wins in the Florida special elections. Yes, the GOP won, but way below what they should have given the demographics of those races. It continues this ominous trend that I was just citing for the last couple of years before the 2024 presidential election. The Republican Party brand, folks, it is mortally wounded. I'll explain why here in a minute, but it is mortally wounded. And outside of where it has overwhelming demographic support, meaning the state is just deep, deep red, it continues to underperform in so-called swing states without now here's the key thing here, without a unique champion atop the ticket that captures the imagination. In 2022, that disappointing midterm, we had 2 exceptions by and large, Iowa and Florida, right? Mm-hmm. And what did you have at the top of the ticket in both of those states? Champions that captured the imagination. So bookmark that. Number 2 here. The GOP as a standalone product continues to give people 0 reasons to vote for it. 0. I mean, Congress has been in session for 3 weeks longer than Trump has been president. Can you name me anything worthwhile they have done to codify any of Trump's agenda the House has done in going on 3 months? Anything at all? Anything? Aaron, can you think of one thing?
Nope.
Nothing.
Not exaggerating.
Nothing. Literally nothing. Literally nothing. Now they're back on another break this week. After they had a 2-week break they did not earn. They're back on another break now because the chamber is hapless. Leadership cannot get its act together. They're squabbling over silly things. I don't know which side of the argument I'm on when I disagree with both of their premises. On one hand, if you want to get elected to Congress, it should kind of be your thing. You are the proxy. You see what I'm saying? You are the proxy for the people. You don't get to sublease your proxyism. They voted for you, okay? So you should be expected to show up to work. Fair?
Yes.
On the other hand, it's also a very bad look for the Family Values Party to be seen telling new parents that they can't have any maternity or paternity leave, in essence. What do you do when both sides look silly in the arguments they're making? I have no idea. So
we're talking about Congress here specifically.
And we could play this out a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. But they just can't get out of their own way. It doesn't even seem like they want to. At least the Senate got almost all of Trump's nominees confirmed. Way more than we ever would have guessed in January. I didn't think I'd be saying this on April 2nd, so maybe it is still April Fool's Day, at least on me. But thank you to John Thune. I have no idea how useful he'll be from this time forward, but we probably already got more out of John Thune than we thought we were going to get at the 1st of January. Fair, where that's concerned?
Yep.
I think Weldon was the only one we didn't get, right?
Yes.
And hey, that he got screwed. But given what we thought the odds were that we were going to get all but one, Thune did his job. I don't have any complaints with John Thune right now. I just assume that I will later. But the House, it's hapless. It's the Cleveland Browns. What are you doing here? What are you, basically? Number 3, I saw a lot of this last night, and I chose not to respond because I wanted to wait until the final numbers were in. There was a lot of talk of, well, we have a different demographic party now of day laborers, everyday people, and so we need more infrastructure investment. We need more, door knocking and all this other kind of stuff. Here's the thing. If I put 1 million door knockers on the ground in your hometown, now let's not do that. Some of you live in small towns. Let's say I put 1 million door knockers on the town here in Des Moines, Iowa, in our town, okay? I pay to have 1 million door knockers go and knock on every door and hand out pamphlets for a 1970s style IBM mainframe computer. And say, hey, you want this computer over your iPhone, okay? I've got 1 million door knockers. Apple is not spending any money on door knockers at all. All right? See where I'm going with this, okay?
Yes.
None at all. All right? And I'm doing that. And I've got 1 million door knockers on the ground in Des Moines, Iowa, population roughly 500,000. Knocking on doors saying, you don't want an iPhone. You want a 70s style IBM mainframe. How many of those door knockers do you think the 1 million of them are going to convert 1-to-1 any sales for the mainframe on one door knock?
Very low number.
Or any of them, in fact.
It might not be 0, but it's probably no more than
anything
1.
That Apple would be concerned about its market penetration in Des Moines, Iowa for the iPhone? No. Why? Because the product that they are knocking doors for, everybody's already proven it doesn't want. Now, did I say door knocking doesn't matter? Is that what I said? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is you can't make chicken salad out of chicken caca. The core message of the right in Wisconsin got out, guys. Did you see the other half of Aaron's results? Voter ID passed in the state. Voter ID passed in the state. More than 120,000 people voted for voter ID than the victorious Democrat. Voter ID passed. Where in America is there any Democrat for voter ID? Where? Aaron, do you know where? Nowhere. Not a single one. There's not a single Democrat office holder anywhere in America for voter ID. Not one. Nowhere. So this isn't some issue where it's got crossover appeal. This is a uniquely right issue. Everybody knows it's one of our signature issues. And it got the most votes statewide of anyone or anything on the ballot last night in Wisconsin. So that means this is not something better methods will fix. And I say this as someone, I'm a stockholder, I'm a shareholder in a company that is trying to bring more AI and digital assets to the table for Republican candidates. So, I believe in this stuff. I was on the ground floor of this on the Cruz campaign, when stuff was all brand new in 2016. So I believe in this stuff. But the problem's not the methods. The problem is more meta. Here's your problem. When people can bifurcate the GOP message from the GOP, the cultural shift we want happens. Like the aforementioned Snow White, Aaron. Did you have to vote Republican to express your disgust for what Disney has become as a company, Aaron, and what they did to Snow White? No. You got to do that directly. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So same thing. Did I have to vote for a Republican on the ballot last night in Wisconsin to express my disgust over the lack of voter integrity in Wisconsin? Did I have to do that?
No.
No. I got to do it directly. And so on the issue, they voted the way we wanted them to. By an almost a supermajority. When people have to uniquely access something through the GOP, they keep refusing to do so outside of the areas the GOP has pre-existing demographic dominance. So this brings us to Trump. See, Trump is seen, because you're hearing now people say, well, if Trump's not on the ballot, our people won't vote for him. That's true. But we won't be successful if we don't recognize why. Okay? Trump is seen as a bifurcation to the public. He is not seen as a unique vehicle of the Republican Party. He has bifurcated his brand from the Republican Party. Remember when he first ran in 2016, Republicans nationwide outperformed him everywhere, right? Then when he ran again in 2024, the reverse happened. Trump has crossover appeal again. He's on with Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz. Not to mention, Trump won because he expanded his coalition. The Maha people, disaffected liberals. Without them, he does not win. Trump is seen as an instrument of bifurcation. If you're not part of the bifurcation, go back to the previous examples I cited here of governors in Iowa and Florida that exceeded expectations in 2022 when the rest of the Republican Party failed to meet them. What's unique about each of them? They bifurcated on COVID. They bifurcated on the crisis of the era. They zigged when everyone else zagged. And throw the Georgia governor in there too. They bifurcated from the era. The Republican Party brand image needs an enema. It needs to be flushed. It is broken, mortally wounded. And then it needs a complete and total reboot. And it has to happen relatively fast. Trump has one term and he's 79. And this is going to take something deeper than J.D. Vance 2028. Because we are infected down at the precinct level now on our side. This needs a cleansing. So you got to have an enema here, got to flush all the bad stuff out of your system, flush it. A cleanse here. And then a total reboot. But the cleanse has to happen before. You can't just run a Lindsey Graham candidate in Pennsylvania and have Trump endorse him. You see what I'm saying? That's lipstick on a pig. That's not going to work. Okay? We need people who are bifurcated from the current Republican brand. When we ask the culture which way, Western man or woman, they are almost always picking our way. When we ask them to vote Republican, with limited exceptions, they're not. A complete and total cleanse needs to occur here. So you can get by running Lindsey Graham forever in South Carolina with a Trump endorsement where the demographics are overwhelming in your favor. People don't want to vote for that class of Republican, though, anywhere else that doesn't have that level of demographic advantage. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter what kind of lipstick you put on the pig. It's a pig nevertheless. Trump successfully rebranded himself. Remember, Aaron, we talked last year about those long-form talk shows and what a huge advantage those were to his campaign. And it reminded everybody just why he was one of the most famous and popular people in the world before he ever ran for president. He got to see that Donald Trump again, right? That helped him to bifurcate himself from the traditional political process and turn his favorables around. So it's not just enough of this is who Trump picked. The brand is broken. That's enough to win you a primary anywhere in America. But if you win the primary and lose the general, who frickin' cares? You might, because it might mean a nice job for you or some form of engagement farming to come. But for the rest of the country who's suffering under the weight of the Democrat that won, it does them no good. The brand is broken. The brand was not fixed by this last election. Trump's brand was, but not the Republican Party brand. Aaron, you have any thoughts?
What is that brand, Steve? I would argue it's one thing, and it goes back to what you were talking about at the very first point. The brand of the Republican Party is inertia. It's just there. It's just kind of there. I would argue in the two examples or three examples that you cited, Republican governor in Iowa, Republican governor in Florida, and to maybe a lesser extent, but still notable nonetheless, is Kemp in Georgia, the Republican governor in Georgia. It wasn't so much a resistance to the crisis of the age necessarily, though that is true and that did help them. The bifurcation, and that's the word of the day here, the zigging when everybody else is zagging. The zagging is the inertia, we're just kind of here. The zig to that zag is actually having accomplishments, actually governing. I would argue that is as much, if not more, of a reason why those examples in Georgia, Florida, Iowa were exceptions to the rule in 2022, as much as it was their policy when it came to COVID, though I don't doubt that also helped. So if you're wondering, well, what do we do then? Something, anything. Mm-hmm. Govern well, govern effectively. Don't get bogged down in, I think that we should vote for a procedure to allow us to vote for another procedure to allow us to vote for whether or not proxies should have proxies. For love of God, do something. Govern. You can do things. First 3 months of the Trump White House, these rogue judges, these tyrants notwithstanding, show us that you can just do things. So if you're looking for the roadmap out of this quagmire for these special elections, what have you, if you're looking for a roadmap, what should my brand be? Your brand should be one of doing things, because that's going to set you apart more than anything from the rest of the Republican Party.
100%. 100% right. I mean, they haven't done anything. Nothing. Remember when I said yesterday going from traitorous to useless is an upgrade? It would actually be an upgrade if they just did the typical GOP milquetoast crap. That would be an upgrade over what we're doing right now. Because they're doing nothing. They're doing nothing. There's at least a constituency for that, Aaron. But there's no constituency for doing nothing. We'll come back. I want to stress a theological point that has been a subtle trend over the last couple of shows that I think needs to be highlighted and not so subtle. And then we'll get to buy, sell, or hold next. Folks, I think we learned some harsh lessons 5 years ago. And the good thing is, though, we met some new friends. And we met some people that also recognized we can't ever let them do this to us again. And one of those friends, our friends over at Deace Medical, what they do, it's a key tool in your toolkit to make sure that that can never happen to you specifically again, or someone you love. You can get the Deace case, which is a backup of proven, venerable, honored, time-tested antibiotics like amoxicillin, doxycycline, and more, just to make sure, hey, you never know, those might be the next ones. If they said a drug they had just given 5 years before the pandemic, if they said that a drug they had just given 5 years before that, a Nobel Prize, if they could just instantly retcon that thing into dangerous horse paste, I don't know why they couldn't do that to doxycycline, amoxicillin, and more. So get your Deace case, the backup of venerable medications you need that are proven just in case. They've also, since they joined us a few years ago, they've expanded their offerings too. All right, you can now expand your Deace case. They've got an ever-increasing menu of options there. You can customize it with practical things like EpiPens, the aforementioned ivermectin, and more. And if you use the code DACE at checkout, you'll get a discount on your order. Code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. DEACE, code DACE at jace.com, Jase, Jase, jace.com, promo code DACE. Before we get to, you know what, let me answer this, because I just got a text from someone I know pointing out, hey, Mike Johnson did lead the way in the House for the budget resolution that Trump wanted. Well, first and foremost, Trump wanted the budget resolution. Almost nobody in his base did. But let me grant that point just to, because I think what you said actually to the person I know that texted that to me during the break, you're actually about to make my point for me. What was the rationale, Aaron, why we had to pass that budget resolution almost nobody wanted? We had to clear the deck, right? Didn't want to risk a shutdown, didn't want to risk a messy budget fight because we didn't want to get in the way of Trump's agenda, right?
Yeah.
That was the rationale, right? Okay. Which is why I also said at the time, as terrible as this is, I'd probably just go ahead and vote for it and not fight it because you don't have to stop. You can't stop it anyway. And we've got other priorities, right? That's what we said on our own show a month ago when this thing came up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So they did that, right? They went ahead and voted for the crap sandwich to move on so they could focus on the other items on Trump's agenda. Exactly how many of those items, Aaron, have they focused on since?
Zero.
Zero would be the answer. So we got, I hate to sound like Daniel Horowitz, but we got the worst of both ends here. He's right on this one. We got the worst of both ends. We got a crappy budget deal nobody wanted. And then they didn't take the moment that was given to them, at least not so far. They didn't take the moment given to them to focus on the other things that we wanted them to do to codify Trump's agenda. They've done none of that. None of it. We got the worst of both ends. We got the crappy budget deal, but then none of the other priorities we were told we were going to get instead. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if I would have known that this was how this was going to play out, I just said, hey, everybody ought to vote with Massey then, and let's just shut the whole thing down. What's the point of a crappy budget deal and fighting on no other front? I'll take a crappy budget deal because I've been taking crappy budget deals my entire life, frankly. So I'll take a crappy budget deal if we're going to actually fight on these other fronts for a change. But we took a crappy budget deal and did nothing else. So it's just a crappy budget deal. It did not accomplish what we were told it would. At least not so far. And Mike Johnson's not solely to blame, but ultimately he is the Speaker of the House. We are a biblical worldview show. The creation runs on headship. Who's the head of the House, Aaron?
That would be Mike Johnson.
That would be Mike Johnson as the Speaker. So ultimately, it is his responsibility.
And they were going to vote this week. Did you see this? They were going to vote on a bill that would rein in some of these district courts. And then this whole thing with whether or not proxies for proxies should actually happen.
Yep.
That somehow got in the way of it. Johnson could have just kept on going, but he made of his own volition for whatever reason. I'm sure there was some rationale there. He just decided to give him the rest of the week off.
I think I've settled on what position on this debate I have. If your Congress is shut down by this debate, you lost. There's no side. If this is the issue that shuts your Congress down for a week when all hell is breaking loose, I don't care what side you're on. You're just a loser. You're just a loser. It's a little bit like, well, we've got this great game plan. Our wide receivers are really fast. Our running backs break a lot of tackles. But we can't do the center quarterback exchange. We can't hike the ball. If you can't hike the ball, does it matter what else you've got? You can't put the ball in play. If you can't hike the ball, you lost. If this is what caused your caucus to fracture and required an entire 1 week cool down, you've already lost. I don't care what side you're on. The whole thing's an L. Ridiculous mismanagement. Just like it'd be ridiculous mismanagement to recruit and coach a football team and not get the center exchange right. If you can't put the ball in play, what's it matter? If they're not going to be there to vote on things, what the heck does it matter? They can't put the ball in play. Now, since I teased this, I want to get to it. You hear Todd say a lot when he's here, because he's Catholic, faith without works is dead. He's quoting from James, one of most Catholics' one of their favorite books of the New Testament, the one Luther tried to get taken out of the New Testament, in fact. You also, though, saw him, and Todd's not here today. He's, got a medical issue with one of his daughters. He's out of state taking care of that with his family. Fair to say, smitten with Rosaria Dawson yesterday.
Butterfield.
I'm sorry. When I say Dawson, my bad. The actress. Rosaria Butterfield. Theologically smitten, I mean.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Theologically, kindred spirit kind of smitten, right? Okay. And she's an evangelical's evangelical. So what do they have in common here? Something very important. You heard Rosaria say yesterday that her church, did you hear her say this, Aaron? Quote, prepared me for war. Did you hear that? They prepared me for war. See, Rosaria and Todd both come from traditions where the responsibility of the believer is ecclesiastically stressed. Now it's stressed in different ways. Okay, it's stressed in different ways. So Todd comes from a church as a Catholic that believes in justification by faith, but not faith alone. Faith and works. Therefore, some level of engagement to confirm your salvation rests on your responsibility in his theology. Now, Rosaria comes from a tradition as a Presbyterian where this sentiment is a similar expressed sentiment, but it is done differently. It's expressed eschatologically. She comes from a tradition that believes the Lord will not return until the church fulfills its mission to disciple the nations. And so that therefore she comes from a tradition that that the church will win in history. So therefore it is an ecclesiastical construct, requirement, expression consistently in her tradition that there is a responsibility for her. Now, again, it's different than Todd's. As a Catholic, this goes to the heart of Todd's understanding of justification, meaning he must engage to confirm the covenant that Christ has inspired and started with him. Christ initiated, he must now respond and continue on responding. And I'm not a native Catholic, man, so I'm trying to express this with my own evangelical bias as fairly as I can, so sue me later, okay? But he believes as a Catholic that Christ initiated with him. He must now respond and has an obligation to continue on responding. And he responds both in faith and also in works, and that confirms his justification. Rosaria's tradition says that is more missiology. There is a reason the church is here. And it is for more than mere conversion. It is to disciple the nations. That's the original language of the Great Commission. And so because some form of responsibility on the believer is ecclesiastically expressed on a consistent basis in each of their traditions, there is an incentivization, if not demand, for engagement of the believer that frankly does not exist in a lot of your modern evangelical dispensational churches. That is not to say that that is a uniform thought. You guys know how much I love Jack Hibbs. He's a dispensationalist. And that what I just described would not fit in to what is ecclesiastically expressed on a consistent basis, either in the announcements before Jack preaches or while he does. But it is no coincidence that as an eschatology has taken over, that essentially says things will get worse no matter what we do. At best, we're driving a car with the gas and the brakes at the same time. It is no coincidence that as that kind of eschatology has taken over in America, engagement from the evangelical church has declined. That's not a coincidence. That whole binding and loosing thing, which you preach and stress from the pulpit on Sundays, is what you're going to get Monday through Saturday. Now, that's not an argument against dispensationalism. That is a result of it. You can't ignore. John MacArthur is a dispensationalist. And until the last few years, he was pretty much out of the culture war. He preached the American Revolution was a violation of Romans 13. Then one day, Gavin Newsom shows up at his church and says, hey, shut her down. And his church had to completely re-examine its own ecclesiology about engagement with the state, and they did. And then ended up confronting Gavin Newsom, not taking it from him, taking him to court and defeating him. But notice what occurred there. They had to reassess their own ecclesiology. So again, I'm not here to referee fights between established theological traditions of orthodoxy that harken back to people way smarter and more qualified to do so than me. But you cannot ignore the trend line either. Why were Catholics originally more involved in the abortion issue before we were? Because the two best-selling nonfiction books of the 1970s were Eric von Donigen's Chariots of the Gods and Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth. We were all convinced that Jesus was coming back in 1988, 40 years, a generation after the reconstitution of Israel. We were disengaged. So it doesn't have to be an excuse for passivity, but all too often, frankly, it has been. The trend is what it is. That cannot be ignored. So I would urge, if you are a pastor with a dispensationalist bent and belief in our audience, I would urge you still to make sure you are stressing the Great Commission to your people. We are still to disciple the nations. And if anything, I would think that your eschatology would maybe cause you to even have more of an urgent desire to imminently engage if you're reading the signs of the times accordingly. Time is short. We might be the determinative generation. But it does matter when you come from traditions that stress ecclesiastically, meaning from the church, whether that's from the pulpit, whether that's from creeds or dogmas or doctrines, or all of the above. It's systemic within the tradition. It does matter when the responsibility of the believer is stressed. When you stress something, you'll get more of it. And when you don't, you won't. Aaron, you have thoughts?
That is a perfect note to end on. I thought about this. My pastor, I come from a dispensationalist church. He's pretty dogmatic in his pre-mill eschatology. But you know what he does anytime this comes up? What does he do? He ends the sermon, he ends the diatribe by a message of urgency. The hour is late, let's get to work. That's what has to happen if you come from a disp or premillennial bent with your eschatology. The hour is late. But think of it, whether it's the two books that you just articulated there, I think the mainstream of evangelical, really Protestantism in the United States, has let their eschatology shape them in a way that constitutionally makes people just kind of sit down and not do anything. This kind of driving with the gas and the brakes on at the same time type of thing. Either way, wherever you fall, the urgency is needed right now. There are even some post-mill people who would say, hey, this actually is an excuse for pietism because Christ wins in the end anyway, and so I don't need to do anything. Either way, you can fall into ditches. But I think the ditch that most of Protestantism, particularly evangelicalism in this country, has fallen into is preaching that the Lord is coming back, preaching that things are going to get even worse, but not preaching on the urgency that means, that actually presents you with, the urgency of the hour at hand. And so that's why you fall into the broader conversation here. You kind of just fall into this ditch of not really doing anything, not really refining your mind, not really learning to love the Lord with it. It affects everything. I do believe on some level eschatology is missiology. It can be, but it doesn't have to be all the time. Not in the negative way.
Well said as well. We'll come back. It'll be your turn. We're going to play Buy, Sell, or Hold next. Stay tuned. All right, back here at Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre. Todd has the day off. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. steve@stevedeace.com is where we want you to go if you want to email the show. DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then also, if you are a podcast fan, thank you. Please hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow. Leave us a 5-star review as well. Now's a great time to do both of those things. As I've been mentioning, we're, for now, and I like the traction and what we're seeing. For now, we have listed the show in the religion and spirituality category. That's also one of the biggest categories on iTunes. It's even bigger than the news category we were in, although most of the names most of you would know are in that category. But we are concerned about the state of the church. And, when we first started doing this show, long before Todd and Aaron came on board, I thought that my understanding of pop culture and coming from the sports world would maybe give me an opportunity to broaden the appeal of a biblical worldview, to get the broader culture to consider it in ways that previously they had not. But as we get 20 years into this, and I now see the MAGA doing more to take on the moral forces that we're up against in the culture these days than the churches systemically. I'm now kind of thinking we've got to disciple the church, folks. So we're gonna be more direct in our messaging and branding at trying to get to the church. And I mean, if you look at that religion and spirituality category and a lot of the other top shows that we're listed among there right now, a lot of them, for example, are for and by women. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but That's only half the species here, and especially the side that God gave the headship to, kind of important to maybe do something to reach them as well. And that's before we even get into what's actually the teaching in some of these shows. Some of them look very good. Some of them I'm like the Steve Carell, yikes, thing. So now would be a great time because we're trying to maybe get some people that maybe hadn't heard of us before, but never knew we existed, and we're right in their wheelhouse to get them on board. So if you guys really, it's now a great time in particular. It's always a great time, but now in particular is a great time to engage back with us on your podcast feed, particularly if it is Apple. All right. So thank you for all of that. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Smart Credit. With interest rates expected to drop, you could save a ton on everything you finance. That's great news, but here's the catch. To cash in on the savings, you're going to probably need a higher credit score. And with Smart Credit, on average, users raise their credit score up to 34 points in just 30 days. Now imagine that, a lower car payment, better mortgage rate, major savings. Smart Credit's patented technology scans your credit profile and pinpoints exactly which bills to pay and when, in order to maximize your score. It's like having the best credit knowledge right there in your pocket. So don't wait. Take control of your credit score with Smart Credit. Be ready to cash in when interest rates fall. You can start right now with a 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/Steve. Just $1. Just $1. All right. See how many points that you can add to your credit score for just $1. And then if you want to stick around long term and get more of their specific recommendations of how to get there, you can make that decision. Okay. You might find out, hey, maybe my credit score is in the 700s and it's okay. It could be, I'd like it higher, but that's pretty much going to get me what I want. So maybe it's not worth it. That's okay too. What do you got to lose for just $1? All right, smartcredit.com/Steve. Smartcredit.com/Steve. Average point changes are based on historical data. Individual results may vary and are not guaranteed. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. In fact, I think, Aaron, we're just going to let Daniel respond to the 3 points I made last hour about what happened last night in Wisconsin.
Should be good.
And get his thoughts on those things. But let's get to buy, sell, or hold. Aaron, you have the submissions. There's no Todd. So Aaron and I will decide. Are we going to buy it? Are we going to sell it?
I get to play?
You want to play?
Yeah.
I thought you might want to play. I mean, it's kind of cheating in a way because you selected the submissions too, but it's all right.
I play anytime I want to.
I think Connor Stallions is a legend, so everybody knows I'm completely in favor of cheating here on this show if it's to my advantage. All right, so I think for a hold, what's a good hold, do you think? Since Todd's not here, it kind of takes the fun out of coming up with something that's going to... When he does that thing where he's like sitting like this waiting for what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And then he goes like this and leans forward after I say it, and he's like, okay, no. Kind of takes the fun out of it when he's not here to do that, right?
Yeah. Good hold.
You know what? Let's just do the Protestant honor code. If you hold, you're just a punk, and everybody knows it.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Let's only work. You know what? General rule, since he's not here, we only do shame-based incentivization when the Catholic is here. Fair?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's totally on brand.
Okay.
On brand as it gets.
Agreed.
Let's start out with a few from uncontexted Deace 2 Electric Boogaloo. Steve Deace cast as the Pumpkin Spice in Avengers Doomsday. Buy, sell, or hold.
I'm buying. That's incredible.
Aaron McIntyre cast as Coy Boy in Avengers Doomsday.
Coy Boy.
Man, look at that outfit. Uniform, whatever you call him.
That's great.
Love it.
That's great. Now, that's a reference to something that came up on the show last year, by the way. So
I want a
that's
koi
a deep pull,
pond.
but well done.
I want a koi pond someday in my retirement, like a massive one, not one of those, like something you would see at a botanical center, a botanical garden, something like that. Todd Erson cast as Good Evil Twins and Mr. Vinegar and Dr. Discomfort.
Dr. Discomfort's great.
Avengers Doomsday.
Dr. Discomfort is great. I'm all in on Dr. Discomfort. I like it. Yes.
Thank you for the laugh, uncontexted too. Now let's go to this. I might just be sleep deprived. I might just be a little bit crazy or maybe stupid. But I thought this was incredible. I love this idea. What do you think, Steve?
Okay.
Tiny Johnny, and it's a little bit long, but it's worth it. Tiny Johnny says, just create Doge. Pronounced like D-O-G-E, but instead it's D-O-J-E. Department of Judicial Efficiency. Appoint a judge, any judge, friendly judge, to review every situation a lower judge blocks an executive order to see if they have a legitimate reason for that order. If they don't have a solid reason, inform the judge their decision will be ignored. If they do have a solid reason, inform the judge, nice try, then ignore the order. If people have a problem with the DOGE, the D-O-J-E, Trump should inform them he'd be happy to discuss its elimination if judicial impeachments commence. I love this idea. Just create something. It's extra constitutional, just pointing out the absurd nature of the extra constitutional powers that these judges seemingly think that they possess.
Conceptually, it's brilliant. Now, I could argue, if I wanted to make the perfect the enemy of the good, that it doesn't necessarily get to the heart of the problem we have here. Okay. I don't think that this would be a generational reset per se, like the president just directly telling one branch, telling the other branch to go, jump in a lake. But politically, conceptually, I think it is brilliant. The one issue you're going to have is, who is your judicial Elon Musk? Because notice who's very silent about much of this on our side. A lot of your conservative lawyers, legal beagles. Why? I can tell you, I know some of these people privately. Privately, they'll say things they will never say publicly. Why? Because they're going to be in these people's courts. And they know that these judges will hold it against them and their clients. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Notice the conservative. And when I say conservative, I don't just, I mean like the people I would talk to. Okay? Not the, the typical, hacktivists, grifters, the people I hang out and talk to. Notice they're very silent because they don't want to get marked. I mean, I don't know that I've told you guys this on the air before, but I got a call from the head at the time. He was the head of the Polk County Republican Party. That's our county where we live, largest county in Iowa. And I known him for years. Long-standing trial attorney in Des Moines, very successful one. And he called me after our retention election victory. And you know what he told me, Aaron? Don't ever do anything wrong the rest of your life as long as you live here. He told me, you are on every list down here at the courthouse. Don't challenge a speeding ticket. Don't have too much to drink and get behind the wheel. Don't eat your wife, he's like, if your wife's on crack and tries to beat you with frying pans, don't try to physically restrain her. Do nothing. Do absolutely nothing that would ever cause you to require your name to be called in a court of law for the foreseeable future, if not forever, in Polk County, Iowa. Because you're screwed. Well, he didn't use the term screwed. Okay. He's like, no, don't. So this is a very vindictive sphere. And you're going to need to find somebody who doesn't care, like a Musk. He's got that, what kind of money. So somebody who's a retired, is maybe out of practice, but respected, I'm sure we could come up with that kind of a name. But you wouldn't, anybody who ever has any designs on stepping into a federal court ever again would never do this, unfortunately. So you gotta figure out who's the person that they don't care about that stuff anymore, that you could get to be your Elon Musk. But conceptually, I'll buy it. Sure. It's brilliant.
Next up, so I'm buying. I think it's awesome. I mean, you just have to find a friendly legal scholar, appoint them as a quote-unquote judge, and let him get to work. Clinton Shaw says, with Elon getting kicked out of Doge next month or leaving of his own volition, I'm not sure what the story is, the cuts will stop and it'll be back to 2017 business as usual with the backroom deals. I'm selling on this. There's an entire... without him there, I'm not sure if we're going to have that much of a focus, because that's been a huge focus of the first 3 months of the Trump administration. But there's an entire staff there. It's not just Elon doing all of the cutting. There's an entire staff there. So I think their work actually statutorily, as it pertains to the executive order that created it, goes all the way until, I think, the 250th birthday celebration. Is that next year or the year after that?
I will sell for the same. I'll sell as well. And let me put maybe emphasize your point all the more. They need this talking point. They meaning the Trump administration. It is providing them fuel for daily pushback against the media and the swamp. So they need this to continue to produce the kinds of talking points of what was it, 120,000 Social Security accounts of people that were dead or something like that, I think it was. They need these talking points to continue politically. It's one of their biggest assets right now. So they're going to keep this going for as long as they can for that reason whatsoever. And who knows, Musk stepped away after he first bought Twitter. Remember, he was on it all the time, said, I got to get back to work. Then then they shot Trump and, he came back. I mean, who knows whether he's back, whether he's not, but the Trump administration needs the talking points that Doge is providing. And so I don't think they'll be stupid enough to just allow those to fade to black. So I'll sell.
Next, we go to Ben's China Compass. If Trump teams up with Putin, as Steve suggests, then China will attempt to team up with the European Union via financial pressure and blackmail.
I thought about this. Yeah.
I'm selling. They've already teamed up with the European Union.
And you know what? That's exactly what I was just going to say. I thought about this and then realized that's essentially de facto what we already have. It would just now be out into the open. So it is what it is. Yeah.
Next, we go to BC. Steve's house remodel is quote unquote very cute.
we did a cute remodel of our main level last year. All right. So
you got to stop saying that.
We're not wealthy, but we're not poor either. So it wasn't like extravagant. It was cute. And it's a cute suburban house that you think grandma and grandpa live there. That's kind of what it is when you walk in now. You think that's emasculating? Is that what you think?
Yeah. So you should never refer to a remodel as cute.
Okay. All right.
Just a nice. It's very nice.
It's a nice one. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. All right. I did something I don't usually do, and I took a very long and lengthy and wordy submission, but stay with me here. I don't do this often, so when I do it, it's because I think there's something worth talking about here. Luke O'Halloran said, historically speaking, education was not primarily about learning writing, reading, and arithmetic. It was primarily about shaping character and creating moral Christian citizens. Not exclusively about those things, not only about those things, but primarily about those things. Obviously, they learned things, but the main function was creating Christian character and worldview. The same is true today, but the end goal has been reversed. The public education system seeks to create God-hating, man-hating, even human-hating Marxists. Therefore, it is foolish and actually sinful for Christian parents to send their children to Satan's youth group. Christians are required to give their children a Christian education, and our public school system does the exact opposite. Buy, sell, or hold his logic.
I will 100% buy the logic, but I think your application is too harsh. I just think it's too harsh. We are in a society, folks, where we are working every year until minimum June 1 to pay off our tax debt. We've had 19 Jimmy Carter era inflationary increases. We currently don't even have a real estate market and haven't really had one for 5 years. So we have more single parents than we've ever had before. We have more out of wedlock births than we ever had before. The number one determiner of a woman's economic status remains being married to a man who's a good provider. So I just think there are too many pressures squeezing down throughout various sectors of the culture to apply a standard that idealistic. So tell me what you think my answer is then.
So I think you're selling. Okay. I think that's fundamental enough for a wholesale sell. And I will sell as well. I think if you limit it to, if you are a Christian parent who is aware of everything and agrees with everything that you just said there, can't afford an alternative, can't afford to stay home, but you choose to send your kids to public school, Satan's youth ministry, maybe your school is really, really bad and it fits that to a T. That's still, overall, that is basically the impetus. That is the That is the wind beneath the wings of public schools all across the fruited plains. But there are exceptions. There are better schools in better areas and worse schools in worse areas, and better schools in worse areas and worse schools in better areas. You get what I'm saying? It's not all 100% in line. But if you are a Christian parent, you understand all of that. You understand that the Christians or the public school in your area really is Satan's youth ministry. You have the means to shield your children from that, and you choose to send them anyway, then you might be getting into sinful territory. Now, sins are sins whether or not you are aware of sins or not. But I think it is over. I think yes, the application here is overbroad, but I think what is the true sin, what is the true evil here, what is the root cause of parents feeling like, hey, we either provide for our family or we send our kids to public school. Those roots go way deeper than the public schools themselves. Where are we as a country, as a culture, where we have to make those ridiculous decisions? And I think those are really where the root causes, because you change those causes, I think the schools change too, unless of course you think that public schooling is in and of itself a demonic construct. One
thing I'll add to this too, remember one of our partners last year was Nehemiah Institute. What's that thing over your shoulder there?
It's my 100% certified based certificate.
Yes. So Nehemiah Institute for decades, you got that certificate from them, right? Because you scored 100% on their Christian worldview test, right? I think I only scored an 89, so there you go. So, but that test is given to Christian school students all over the country. How many of them are scoring my 89 or your 100?
Very few.
Very few at the Christian schools. Okay, so it's not even a guarantee that you can find one of those committed to discipleship and missiology. Right? It's not like the church is going to systemically abandon discipleship and missiology, but the apparatuses that come out of the church are going to be uniquely good at it when the churches that they came out of are not. You see what I'm trying to say?
Correct.
Okay? That's typically not how things work, you know? So I will tell you, if it is at all possible, do not send your kids to the government schools. I will tell you that. But sometimes it's not possible. And sometimes you have total control of the school board in a small rural town, you know? So God bless you for that.
Next up, going to Tom Gabriel. Top 5 things a father needs to teach his daughter. Number 5, financial literacy. Buy.
I'll buy, yeah.
Number 4, how to change a tire. Buy.
I'll buy, yeah.
Number 3, how to shoot to kill. Buy.
Okay, I'll buy in this day and age, sure.
Number 2, hand-to-hand self-defense.
Okay, I mean, I don't know how many dads, what does that mean?
I'm not sure. Maybe, getting classes for karate or taekwondo or some sort of mixed some sort of martial arts, I should say.
Okay.
And number 1, self-respect.
Well, number 1's an automatic. Did you guys see that thing? There was a video going around of a very attractive young woman playing a video from one of these gals that's doing the I slept with 100 guys, 1,000 guys in a day thing. Okay. And so she starts playing the clip of one of these gals tragically doing this, and then interrupts her and says, I thought about doing this, but then I didn't because my dad told me he loved me. Point made. You see what I'm saying? That's essentially where that source of self-respect comes from. So, you bet. Thing is, I think I've only done 3 of those. So,
what I like about this is that these are applicable things for now. If you're still in the house while they're looking for a mate and when they have one, because when you get married, it's the husband's job to provide and protect over your daughter. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to be there 100% of the time. So self-defense, shooting to kill, that's all good stuff. And self-respect is always something that you need to have. Another way of saying, I love you, something like that. Next, we go to Coach Okra. Actually, no, we're not going to do this one. I meant to take that out of there because there's a top 10 list of Val Kilmer movies that we'll get to later.
Okay.
Aaron Reale says, since Steve mentioned him on Tuesday's show, William Howard Taft is one of the most underrated presidents with one of the most impressive
100%.
political resumes in American history. We need more Taft.
100%. 100%. And Taft represented the based right wing of the early 20th century. And Teddy Roosevelt was a great American, don't get me wrong, on many, many fronts. But his lasting political legacy is that he came out of retirement, formed a third party called the Bull Moose, because he was disgusted at how based and right-wing Taft and the Republican Party was becoming. And he came out of retirement. Yet another guy doesn't finish well. And this is why that's part of my daily prayer. Lord, let me finish well. And a lot of times it's the men who were the best when they were younger that don't finish well, which is kind of weird. But Teddy came out of retirement as a Bull Moose Republican, ran third party with the specific goal of throwing the election to Woodrow Wilson if necessary. I mean, he wanted to win, but he just wanted to make sure Taft did not. And Woodrow Wilson is the pre-Obama. Woodrow Wilson was the beachhead. I mean, listen, we're
He was the John the Baptist.
Yeah, great example. The forerunner. You guys, we are the show that follows Glenn Beck. I don't have to educate a Blaze audience on who Woodrow Wilson was. This is like one of Glenn Beck's lifelong laments is Woodrow Wilson because he's a student of history. All right. So Teddy Roosevelt made Woodrow Wilson possible. And then in exchange for giving the assist to the dawn of the modern leftist progressive movement. A century later, they canceled him, called him a racist, took him out of the Museum of Natural History, and now he's just another white devil. So that's the posthumous gift that Teddy was given for his sacrifice on the left's behalf.
Yeah, I'll buy. And just so you know who you are, just frothing at the mouth, trying to take this show out of context for parasitic engagement on social media. I'm talking about an archetype John the Baptist. This is like an upside down, un-American forerunner, foreteller, precursor to Barack Obama. But so I'll buy, Aaron. I'll buy your submission about Taft. Chuck Morris says these federal judges are overplaying their hand. Too many injunctions. Soon, when Trump defies them, most of the public will be on his side.
As long as it's soon, I agree. Now, it could even be later. Though I just don't know what the events will be later. Right now, he has the most momentum, the most popularity, and the most solidarity behind a galvanizing issue, immigration, that he's had in his entire political career. So that's why I'm urging now. There may be a better moment to do it a year or two from now. There also may not be, right? So I don't like waiting for events to unfold that I have no control over and cannot foresee. I would prefer to solve my problems with aggression in the moment in which I currently can. So my advice to the Trump White House would be now is there might be a better moment later. It's also very possible if you miss this moment, there will not be. So take advantage of this moment right now. If he does, then I'll buy this. I agree.
All right. Next, I agree with that as well. So federal judges overplaying their hand, too many. The only reason I'm selling this is because I think the public is probably already on Trump's side. Which
is exactly why he should act on their behalf.
Correct.
Yes.
Just get it over with.
Yep.
The Blake, what's going on here? What in the world is going on?
Did that completely reboot?
Yeah, it's not responding to my mouse or anything. Yeah. I tell you what, Apple products, they were good at one time. But what has been consistently bad about Apple products is whatever Bluetooth...
Rush Limbaugh's going to come down from heaven and beat you for this. Okay.
Whatever Bluetooth subcontractor they use for their Bluetooth radios has always been really janky. Let's see. Finally, with this one, the Blake Crows says, we need Trump to break up the mega corporations that own all the TV stations, which has led to the demise of mass media. This also applies to radio stations, which led to the death of the music industry. 10 to 15 companies owning most of TV and radio media is a terrible idea.
I would agree with this. I don't disagree with that. I'm in favor of capitalism. I'm not in favor of mercantilism or corporatism. And especially when we're talking about the free-flowing and dissemination of information, there's a matter of public interest there. Okay. And And then you create incestuous relationships where just a few of these companies control that flow. They're able to then be too big to fail in exchange for the government granting them even more control. And you end up with a feedback loop. Maybe you want to call it a swamp. I'll buy this. I agree.
Well, before you even get to those problems, which are real and legitimate, and we've seen those, there's a fundamental problem here, and we're seeing this play out. And so whether or not it's Trump, so I'll buy this. I think it would hasten the demise of these companies. So I'll buy the overall premise that we should break up the big media megacorps that are controlling. I just think we're learning now that local media just cannot work in a nationally corporate model. It just can't. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that local media is always going to make big bucks. But heck, we've got a radio station. I don't know if it's northern Missouri or southwest Iowa. It just pops up in my mind that makes good money. It has probably a staff of probably 20, 25 people. It's a radio station. I think it's KMA land. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's, from what I've heard, it makes pretty good money, but it's not corporately owned. All of these big radio stations, a lot of them are clear channel stations, meaning they're clear channel FCC designation, 50,000. They're owned by these big megacorps. And they're struggling, from what I know anyway. Mm-hmm. So I just don't think the local media model, it's not maybe going to make a huge amount of money for their local operators and local owners, but it can be profitable still. I just don't think that works with a nationally corporate model, who is the only thing they care about, not local coverage, is just squeezing every single nickel and dime out of every single transmitter that they have their pause on. That doesn't serve the public interest. It doesn't generate listeners. It doesn't create compelling content that is locally focused. It's just a fundamental problem before you get to the meta problems that you just articulated.
That's a good point too.
I think that'll be it for this segment. When we come back with overtime and bonus buy, sell, or hold, top 10 Val Kilmer movies. We also have a few sports submissions as well. So
you decided to pepper those in without Todd here since you didn't have to hear it?
Might as well.
Take advantage of him not being here to sports bro you. All right, when we come back, Daniel Horowitz is going to join us. We're going to get his thoughts on what happened in Wisconsin last night with those results and his reaction to my analysis. See if he agrees, disagrees, maybe would word some things differently or highlight some things I missed. We'll get to that here in a moment. Stay tuned. Back here on the Steve Deace Show. Hey, let's be honest, man. The crazy schedules we keep nowadays can make eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables feel impossible. We don't always get to eat healthy. We're on the road. I'm going to be on the road some this weekend. We're going to have a special edition of the program on Friday. Dusty Devers, an interview that you guys have been asking for, a segment of you for a couple of years now. He's going to be the part of our special edition long-form interview on Friday because I'm out on the road speaking. All right, and so that's why a group of doctors created Field of Greens. It's a delicious glass of nutritional armor for your body. Each fruit and vegetable was doctor selected for a specific health benefit. There's our heart health group, lungs and kidney groups, metabolism for a healthy weight. You can get the energy that you want with Field of Greens, and then all the confidence as well that you are getting the guilt-free health and nutrition that your body needs daily. Your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. Let's get you started with a special discount, 20% off your first order. Just use my code Steve to get you started. My code Steve at fieldofgreens.com. That's code Steve at fieldofgreens.com. And let's welcome in. He is the prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, and good to see you, my friend. And on purpose, I have not said this to Todd and Aaron. I told the audience this morning at the top of the show, but I've not said a word about this Wisconsin race. I've not commented on social media. I wanted to sit back and let the results speak for themselves because the 2024 election was an aberration for what we had seen in the 2 years of elections nationwide leading up to it, right? And it's clear there is a cultural shift going on. When you see an R-rated Jason Statham right-wing populist retribution porn film outdo Disney's Snow White at the box office, there's clearly a cultural shift happening, right? But that doesn't mean that the Republican Party brand is something people want to support at the same time. So this was the first time, 2024, Trump was now more popular than the GOP, when before it was more popular than him, right? So is he able to transfer some of his newfound popularity beyond our base, but the broader public? Can he bestow it upon the Republican Party? So I wanted to wait and see. And I think we got our answer last night, that the answer is no, he cannot. So I gave the audience 3 observations out of this election. Before I'm going to go through each of them, get your reaction, but let me just start with your meta-analysis of what I just said first.
Well, history, as you say, doesn't only repeat, it rhymes. It's funny how it says in Ecclesiastes, it's not just that there's nothing new under the sun, but there are times where people would say, hey, come and look, there is something new. Indeed, it's not. And you have all these neophytes that are taking over on the right, suddenly rocketing to great prominence in terms of influence or subscribers, and they literally don't know where the bathroom is. A lot of them weren't around in 2017, much less, way before that. So they think, oh, this is a trend, or this is happening, or permanent majority, or they literally cannot see more than an inch in front of them, more than their next tweet the next hour. And for us, it's like the cycle repeats and repeats. We'll have a little bit of a nuance. This is 2017, 2018 all over again, where Republicans come in, they have no narrative. They're not getting anything done. It's like you always say, it's just a trash bin compilation of 50 million factions. There's nothing cohesive. The only thing that has held them together was fealty for Trump as a brand in terms of the person. So there is an uninterrupted stream of observations now. I've gotten things wrong. You've gotten things wrong. Most people get things wrong on horse race. And that's why I say I'm, more of a policy person than horse race. But I think what's clear is now we have a full picture. Republicans have an uninterrupted losing streak since 2017, okay? Particularly special elections, but really across the board, with the one exception of Trump performing very well in 2024. But even then, down ballot, even at the pinnacle of their performance, with everything so terrible, the economy terrible, Biden terrible, Harris creepy, weird, they came away with the lowest level of support in the House, or the smallest majority of an incoming trifecta in like 100 years. Mm-hmm. It's unusual. And, they couldn't flip like the Pennsylvania legislature, which you would have always done in an election like that. You look across the board. Now they own it. Okay, they own all the bad stuff. They're not really getting much done other than Trump's executive orders, but most of the big ones are being, held up in the courts. And there's no narrative. Mm-hmm. Trump's not on the ballot. Mm-hmm. You traded the suburban voters for this new coalition, this shotgun relationship for mainly Trump himself, certainly when he's on the ballot under that circumstance in that time. Now they sure as heck aren't turning out. And what we're seeing is a continuation of what you and I saw before 2024, except now it's even worse, of a 20 to 30 point swing if Republicans aren't paying attention, and if they are and they scramble, a 11 to 15 point swing away from them. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to hear about this election was stolen or this one had a bad candidate. You look across the board, 2 special elections in Iowa, 1 in Pennsylvania, 2 congressional in Florida, underperforming 15 and 21 points respectively. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, Wisconsin Education Superintendent, a county executive there, and then the Aurora County or Aurora City, Illinois mayor being thrown out. It's across the board. The picture is the same. They traded a suburban base for another base that, at least as of yet, will only turn out for Trump, and probably only under certain circumstances.
All right. I've got 3 points here. I want to go through all 3 of them. and then I'm going to turn it over to you. You can agree, disagree, add, subtract, multiply, divide, question, comment, or insult. Okay? Number one. This and the underwhelming wins in the Florida special elections last night continue an ominous trend we saw for 2 years before the 2024 presidential election, too. The Republican Party brand is mortally wounded. And outside of where it has overwhelmingly demographic advantages, it continues to underperform without a unique champion atop the ticket that captures the imagination. So Kim Reynolds in Iowa, Ron DeSantis in Florida, to some degree, Brian Kemp in Georgia, Donald Trump 2024. All right, without that figure that essentially has wider appeal than the broader party, it has underperformed consistently in the last few years. Your thoughts?
Undeniable. I mean, it's empirical math. You have, kind of the 2010 to 2016 era, Republicans would lose the presidential election pretty handily, but come away 245 House seats, come away with, 7 swing states? Mm-hmm. 6 out of the 7, they had the governorships, they had the legislature, and almost all of them, strong majorities in Michigan and Pennsylvania. They can't hold that anymore. So that's a big problem. They have all the liabilities of perhaps the people that are turned off by Trump, but they don't have Trump himself, the appeal to the kind of replacement or alternative electorate, so they're caught with neither.
Number 2. The GOP as a standalone product continues to give people zero reasons to vote for it. Congress has been in session for 3 weeks longer than Trump has been president. Can anyone point to anything worthwhile to codify any of Trump's agenda the House has done in going on 3 months? And now they're back on another break after a 2-week break they didn't earn because the chamber is hapless and leadership can't get its act together and they're squabbling over silly things. At least the Senate got almost all of Trump's appointments confirmed, exceeding my expectations. So give some credit to John Thune for that.
Yeah, but Steve, what are appointments? That's Trump himself. Mm-hmm. And that's the only area where you see progress, where he is willing to lean in and make sure, that he doesn't take no for an answer. You look at everything else. 2-week break. Last week was the 3rd week. They came back. They passed a low carbon emissions bill and then a STEM grant program, DEI, to take into account people that are historically underrepresented in STEM, that they actually passed that. Girl boss, I need to have babies, but be able to vote by proxy, but be in Congress. So we're shutting down for that. And look, you're watching what's going on in Florida. Mm-hmm. South Carolina Republicans are trying to raise taxes there. The Idaho governor vetoed the medical freedom bill. I mean, the Texas House.
The Republicans literally gave Democrats control of the Texas House. Not even an exaggeration. Just let the Democrats have control of it. Yeah.
They just let them have control. So, I mean, you look everywhere, it's worse than it's ever been. So, of course, there's no reason to vote for them.
Number 3, final one. Respectfully, I submit to some people I genuinely like, because I saw this a lot last night. We need more resources. And I made the analogy, if I paid to put 1 million door knockers on the ground in Des Moines, Iowa, the biggest city of the state where I live, in order to get people to buy IBM 1978 mainframe computers and turn down their iPhones, and Apple spent no money at all, did no external advertising at all, I would get destroyed. Because the product was so bad, it wouldn't matter how many door knockers I put on the ground. People are not trading in their iPhones for a 70s IBM mainframe computer. It's not about methods. The core message of the right got out to the Wisconsin voter, as evidenced by the fact voter ID received 120,000 more votes than the victorious Democrat in the much hyped Supreme Court race. The issue is why you couldn't translate those almost 120,000 people who voted for that, but for the Democrat Supreme Court, into Republican votes. That's the actual issue, and that's not something better methods will fix. I'm all for data. As I said earlier, Daniel, I'm a shareholder in a company that is trying to bring the high value AI data to the base of the Republican Party. I believe in it, okay? But messaging does not fix a lack of message. Methods and shoe leather do not fix not having a narrative or a reason for being. All right, so the problem here is meta. When people can bifurcate the GOP message from the GOP, the cultural shift we want to see occurs. I don't have to vote Republican to give my disgust to Disney and not go to their movie. I can do that myself. I don't have to vote Republican to go in there and vote no on or yes on a resolution to put voter ID into my state's code. All right. It is when people have to uniquely access something through the GOP, they keep refusing outside of areas where Republicans have pre-existing demographic dominance. Trump is seen as a bifurcation. He is not seen as a Republican vessel, but a vessel of bifurcation. And this is why the door knocking methods work for him and not for others. Okay? The party brand and image needs an enema, a flat out cleansing, flushing, and then a complete and total reboot. Your thoughts?
Steve, but you're not going to get that if Trump uses his unique brand and endorses all the status quo guys. I mean, this is the problem. I keep challenging people. We are 9 years into MAGA. The party is worse than it's ever been. What are you going to update? And now with Trump can't appear on the ballot anymore. So you're going to have to find a message to bring people in. And I think, again, it's brought out by the data there. So the problem is, and I hate to sound like I'm against Trump's executive orders because they're amazing, most of them. But the problem is if you signal you're going to kill the left, I mean, destroy them. But then for the most part, you don't really stick the landing. Don't, ignore the courts. Don't fight in Congress. Don't change the primaries. So what's going to happen is the left is activated. So you saw Dane County, which is Madison. They racked up numbers that wasn't presidential, but it was pretty close to a midterm general election. What they were, 2022. And this is kind of a random, April, special, or at least the off season. So they're as, activated as if they're fighting for their lives. Our side, you saw it in Iowa. We swung like a red rural area. Democrats swung it. Pensacola-based Florida. So that's the reddest district in Florida. Trump won it by 37. The Republican candidate only won it by 15. And, so some of this stuff was like sleepy, they weren't paying attention. But, Scott Presler was on the ground in Wisconsin. Elon put in a lot of money. And frankly, Steve, I think if they didn't, they would have lost by 15 to 17.
Probably.
So it was only like 10 or something.
And I still think the voter ID thing still would have passed, by the way.
It would have, because that's
even if that had happened.
Issue.
Yes.
That's a clear issue.
Yes.
People understand it. And this is the frustration. The Republicans are just weird. There's just nothing there. So my challenge to our colleagues that I know Fox News was incessant every day after the election, that we have a permanent majority, super majority in the country. Nobody is going to ever vote Democrat ever again, even when at the pinnacle of the GOP performance, by the way, it was kind of lackluster down ballot. So now what is the plan? What is your plan for reconciliation? What's your plan with the courts? What's your plan for primaries so we have better candidates? What's your plan for red state legislatures? What's your plan for red state governors, most of which are up this coming cycle? But if the plan is the exact same playbook from 2017, 2018, 2028 is going to look like 2020. It's going to be 10 times worse. But then, Steve, we're not going to be left with Republican governors who will help defend us against the FBI kicking in our doors. And then we're completely screwed. So we got to stop looking just 1 inch in front of us. The next talking point, the next tweet, oh my gosh, we dodged a bullet. Like as if politics is a time warp where time freezes at any given moment. No, it's a permanent journey. So you don't get them then, but if you don't do anything transformational now, you'll get them later with a lot more clout and things a lot worse. So I'm as happy as anyone that we didn't get Kamala, but we didn't get her at that moment. Steve, I think you understand this 2017-2018 cycle, what's coming next if we don't prepare in some way.
It's very well said. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you as always.
Take care.
You bet. Here, we got about a minute left. Going to give you the last word. Go ahead.
Well, the reason why we are in this just silly circle of death, this strange circle when it comes to the apparatus of the Republican Party, is because by and large, elected Republicans, with very few exceptions, and then even amongst those exceptions, there are very, very, very few exceptions to the exceptions, and those very few are the names that we just talked about, Ron DeSantis, Kim Reynolds. With very few exceptions, Republicans just get elected to be elected and nothing else.
To be somebody.
They just get elected to be somebody. It's really easy to be a Republican. This party is more comfortable being in the minority, where they don't have to. There's no expectations whatsoever. They're more comfortable. This is something I've heard on this program since I was still in high school. They don't like governing because it's hard. They don't like governing because then they have to do something. It's much more cushy to sit around, do nothing, mouth off at the Democrats on Fox News or wherever, and then go back to not doing anything. That's the Republican Party in a nutshell. We are in this position because our supposed leaders, with very few exceptions, Donald Trump would be one of those, just love doing nothing.
Romans 8:28.